Well, howdy y'all, welcome back to the Social Regressive and what I believe is part 5 in our series. We are developing what I'm calling the RFR, the Regressive Field Rifle or the Regressive Flexible Rifle. Now this name is going to change, it's probably reflected up in the title overhead, because I put out a vote, I asked people to come up with a different name for this. But what we're dealing with is a 6mm ARC carbine. We want something that's lightweight, easy to carry, easy to deploy in any position. We're talking about prone, standing, kneeling, whatever is going to kind of come to hand at the time. I want this to be a rifle that can work on anything on an Oklahoma ranch. That's everything from varmints through coyotes, other predator type animals, up through medium game. So we're talking about deer and hogs. Today we have all the ingredients for that cake and we're gonna bake it. Come on up here. Before you begin, make sure you have the proper tools. Some of these are necessary and some of them you can fudge a little bit. The necessary ones are gonna be your vise blocks. So here's for the upper, here's for the lower, and then we have an armorer's wrench. This DPMS one is heavy duty and it has parts for pretty much everything that we could possibly need. I'm going to put links in the description below to all of the tools that I'm using here today, or ones that I think could flex really well for you. I like to do things on a budget, so these two right here, the pin punch sets that I have, I'll put links to those. They're rather inexpensive and they're very useful, and we will need pin punches of some kind. You could pick some up at Harbor Freight and they'll probably work for you just great. But yeah, one of these is for roll pin punches and one of them is more for straight. We have a screwdriver here, ratcheting type, and we're gonna need at least some Torx bits when it comes time to attach the handguard. So make sure that you have some of those around, or just some kind of Torx wrench. We'll need pliers. I like these needle nose ones because we're gonna be grabbing some very small items. And make sure that you have a torque wrench when it comes time to attach the barrel. It can be beam type, click type, doesn't matter. And then one of the universal things that we're gonna need as we set all this up is going to be some kind of lube kit. This is the one that I recommend the most. I've been using this for years now. This is the Modern Spartan Systems kit, and at the very least, make sure that you get the Modern Spartan Systems Accuracy Oil. This is just magic. I've been using this in pistols, rifles. It does a really good job of continuing to function in the cold, in the heat. It doesn't like to evaporate off. It just kind of stays on the metal for a really long time. And I recommend this extremely highly. Go out and buy that. Now again, I'm gonna have links to whatever I use here in the video. I'm gonna put them down below and you can go directly and purchase those. I'll also put links to all the parts that you see here on my bench. If you wanna do a build that's exactly like this, I'm calling this the Odin build. So you can actually download this Excel file. I'll put it down in the description below, and you can see the various parts that I've selected and what they add up to. And you can kind of switch different parts out if you want. The total carbine that we're going to build today, everything from lower through upper, is going to cost $1,237.76. And that is based around an Odin barrel and an Odin BCG. If you want to build just an upper, maybe you have a lower that you really like, then this upper is going to cost you $826.43. Otherwise, if you want to just buy an Odin upper without picking your own parts, you can spend $949 for that from Odin. So yeah, I'll put links to everything down below. However, we're also going to talk about an alternate build with CMMG, and that's going to be listed out in that document as well. That total carbine, instead of costing about $1,200, is going to be $961.38. Or if you want to build an upper, it'll cost you $609.44. Or if you want to buy an upper directly from CMMG, that's going to be $900. As we build today, I'm going to talk about why I picked the parts that I did and why you might want to swap over to the CMMG side of things if you want to do that. I've also gotten into some other parts, different triggers that you might choose, ways to save some cash here, and I'm going to talk about why you might want to pick one over the other. This Anderson stripped upper cost me $40, and you can usually find them between the $40 to $60 range. That's a great bargain. These work really well. They lock up very tightly with their own lowers and CMMG lowers. I've used them in the past for a few different builds. Yeah, I like these a lot. We're going to be using the Rise Armament upper parts kit, not just because Rise makes awesome stuff, and they do. CMMG makes a good parts kit as well, but I went with these guys because they're just down the street. Rise Armament is over in Broken Arrow, and I've met with those guys. They run a tight ship and they make really good parts. If you're wanting made in America, Rise is the way to go. It's made right here in the center of America. All right, now this part has to be done first. Remember that if the barrel nut is in place, you're not going to be able to slot this pin in anymore. I want This part of the spring pointing upward, this tiny, okay, you can see that there's a short little stubby section sticking out, and then there's a long one. The long is going to go down against this. The short is going to go up against the metal here, and this needs to be kind of wound up a little bit tight so that it's going to spring open. I'm going to partly install the pin, so it's not going to quite go through. And then I'll pre-wind the spring. So I'm going to hold that with one hand and kind of jam it in place. Like I said, that short part goes up top, long goes to the bottom, and then with my free hand I should be able to get the pin through. There we go. Now, here comes the tricky bit. I need to get this pin into the hole at the other end. Aha, there it is. To install the forward assist, we're going to need a little shim wood to help take up the slack here. When I start pounding on this with a mallet, it's going to want to drive that side down, and so I want kind of a catcher's mitt so this doesn't go anywhere. As you can see, we're going to be driving in the pin that holds everything in place from the bottom. This is a bigger hole than the one at the top. This is kind of flared so it's easier to get in. So just like with the ejection port door, I'm going to make sure that everything is properly lubed. This is that Spartan Accuracy oil. We'll lube up the spring a little bit too. So we'll put those two together and set them aside. What I need to do now is get this started, because this is kind of a three-handed circus. If you don't have some of these things already in place, they are not going to go in. As you install the forward assist, note this finger and how it kind of curves. This is going to catch on the bolt, so that part always needs to be facing that direction. You have to keep this straight up and down as we install this. All right, looks like it just barely caught. So now we'll continue driving this in, and it's a little bit easier. You can see that the forward assist is not backing out anymore. Nice and flush, forward assist works. The core of this rifle is Odin Works. I got an 18-inch stainless steel barrel and a matching BCG. I want the bolt and the barrel to mate up as perfectly as possible, so I like to go with the same manufacturer. If you go the CMMG route, get the CMMG barrel. That's a 16-incher, and it's going to be lighter weight than this. But get that barrel and get its matching bolt carrier group, and I think you're going to be really happy. I've tested this in the past. I got a couple CMMG parts, and yeah, they just play really well together, as you might expect. One thing that I'll mention right off the bat is that this barrel is quite heavy. I think I may have gotten some bad information at first about the weight of this. It's something that you'll have to consider for yourself. I chose Odin Works largely because of its reputation for accuracy. I've already seen some groups printed by this barrel in somebody else's rifle, and I'm just blown away by it. I'll annotate the weight of this barrel down below. And there are two different options you can get from Odin Works. They are both cut to a very similar profile, but you have a 21-incher and then you have this, the 18-incher. Both of them have a rifle-length gas system, so you can see that we have the long gas tube. And you have an option of the gas block as well. This is the adjustable one. There's a tunable one as well that's going to save you about 50 bucks. The difference between adjustable and tunable means that you can set where the gas position is to change how much is going back, and then you just kind of leave it there. But an adjustable one like this allows you to actually switch it in the field. So if I get into ammo that's maybe subsonic or some other kind of funky ammo that my rifle doesn't like so much, I can choose to open up the gas port or close it, and I think I'm going to need that with what I plan to do with this rifle. There are different schools of thought for what you should do with the barrel extension, if you should put anything on it. Some people actually kind of epoxy this in place. I'm just going to put a little bit of grease. That'll act as a preservative, and it'll just make things a little bit easier today. Well, it's a nice tight fit. That feels good. And don't forget the pin needs to fit into that recess. The ATI handguard comes with this barrel nut, and this is something that we definitely want to grease up. We're going to be getting into some kind of higher torque, and I don't want any galling in the threads here. So I'll put some inside the barrel nut and wrap it around here. And this, by the way, is part of that Spartan accuracy system. So this is Spartan accuracy grease. All their stuff is made really well. All their different lubricants and cleaners. The Spartan lubricants do a good job of staying exactly where they're supposed to be and not moving around. This may look a little weird, reverse threading this, there we go, but I'm looking for the point where that clicks over. I want to make sure I don't cross thread anything. So now this is going to slot in very neatly. I need to juggle a few considerations as I install this barrel nut. First off, this has to end up at least 30 pound-feet of torque, no higher than 80. I'm shooting for about 60, and based on my install that I've done in the past with an Anderson upper and this particular barrel nut, we usually end up at 60 when we have indexed this properly to fit the handguard in the right spot, because it has to be flat according to the rail up here. I want this to hit the exact right spot, and that usually ends up right at 60 foot-pounds or pound-feet. If you have difficulty getting these screw holes into the exact right spot with the right amount of torque that you're looking for, then you can add this washer. You can kind of crush it in between these two. One more thing, to help mate up these surfaces, we're going to turn this to 30 pound-feet of torque first. So we'll do one pass, and then we'll back it off. We'll do a second, getting it back up to about 30 pound-feet of torque. Back it off, and then we're going to turn this to its final torque. Your wrench is going to have a 1/2 inch square right here. This is where you can pop in your torque wrench and get this down to final torque. In my case, I do need a washer. There are actually 2 of them. They're very thin, so you can stack these if you need to. And they feel like they're different thicknesses. This one feels a little thicker than this guy. So we'll try out the really thin one first. My goal is to get one of these indexing lines straight up and down with the gas tube. These 8 screws will attach the handguard to the barrel, and we'll be able to test and see if this is level. I can use this little spirit level right here, drop it onto the upper, see if that's level, and then see how this compares. If it's off a little bit, and actually this is looking just about perfect, if this lines up, then fine. Otherwise, we can go back and we can turn this back or turn it in just a little bit more and then try reattaching the handguard. In the end, the shims didn't get me the right combination of depth and torque. I'm really emphasizing torque. I want to make sure that this ends up around that 60 pound-feet. So what I have done instead is I've filed off the back side of the handguard. You can see that it's kind of shiny and white now. So this actually fits, and this has an amazing feel to it. This feels really, really flush now. So now I can install these and it should be nice and level. All right guys, I've checked my level, everything is looking good, and now I need to take this down. We'll leave the barrel nut, but the handguard needs to come off because it's time for the gas block. First, we'll need to install the gas tube into the gas block, and remember that there is a bend, 2 bends, to kind of bring it up and over so it's going to make it into the gas port in the upper receiver. So this part needs to go up. This is going to be the low side, and there's a hole drilled right through the middle, right up here, and that is going to be where the pin goes. However, I'm going to start the pin first, get it just partly installed in the block, and then we'll add the gas tube. We have the pin just started, now let's get the gas tube in place. One of the nice things about having a roll pin here is that you can see straight through and see if everything's aligned. I'm using a little painter's tape to help hold everything in place, so hopefully when this goes through, it'll just go straight through the hole. All right, that's feeling smooth so far. Yeah, I can still see daylight through the hole. So now I just need to drill it down flush. The nice folks at Odinworks have given us an index mark on the barrel, and it aligns perfectly with the index mark they have on their gas block. So this is a very easy install. Just make sure that the gas tube makes it into the gas port there. Slide that all the way back, and the depth should be perfect. Now all we have to do is align those 2 index marks, and then on the bottom there are 2 set screws that need to be attached more firmly. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to Loctite those 2. I'm not going to use red Loctite, I'll use blue, and I'm going to attach this more permanently so it won't accidentally walk out in the field. This is a low profile gas block, so it doesn't have a large knob for turning to the different gas positions. Instead, you're going to be using some kind of wrench to turn this from spot to spot. It does have nice little detents, listen to that. Now we can install the handguard. I left out one important tool at the beginning, a torque wrench. This is a Weaver one, and I'll put it down in the description below. But this needs to be 25 pound-inches. While we're still dealing with this barrel, I should point out that while we have that CMMG option that's going to be lighter overall because of its shorter length and its kind of thinner profile, you also have a Proof Research that's going to take the budget up quite a bit. These barrels are a good bit more expensive, but they're carbon fiber wrapped and really lightweight. So if you want to shave off the pounds and you want to drop quite a bit in your wallet, then you can check those out. I believe there's a 16-incher and a 20. We also have a lot of options when it comes to the threaded end of the barrel here. So we're going to take a look at some muzzle devices. This is a YHM Phantom QD brake. This works with my suppressor, and that's why I'm installing this. And there are some other YHM options that may work for you. Remember that we're dealing with 5/8 24 thread on this. This is not a half 28, so make sure you get the right thing. I've put a couple options in the spreadsheet that I've included. You could choose a flash hider, but what I've done is I've included some brakes. I think that even though this is a rather low recoiling rifle, I think it's still going to be really good to have a brake so you can get on target much more quickly with this. It is going to have roughly double the recoil of a .223, which again, is not much, but this is nudging it up quite a bit. And so I'm going to recommend a brake. I may shoot without the can sometimes, but for the most part when I'm out hunting, I probably will use the can. This system and some of the other brakes that you might get into, they have to be timed, so you're going to end up turning this to the right spot. You're not going to use a crush washer for most of these, especially if it's going to be a QD attachment for your suppressor, because there's just higher pressures involved. So what YHM does instead is they've included a couple of shims, actually a whole bunch of them in different thicknesses. And I've selected the ones that are going to work for me today. So these are going to go up against the barrel. And then this times out off, as you can see. So here's the flat plane, and my muzzle brake is off. So what I'm going to have to do is turn this into place, and that's going to get me the proper torque. That's what this section of your armorer's wrench is for. This is sized out for the more 308 size flash suppressors. This goes over the flats and I can turn this into place. However, my washers are a little bit too big. These are round and they don't have flat spots. So I'm gonna kind of tack these down, hit them with a hammer and flatten them down just a little bit to make room for the wrench. The upper receiver is now ready to receive the charging latch and the bolt carrier group. And what I've chosen is this Tribe kind of tactical latch. This is geared so you can grab it from either side, and it has extra long wings. Since I'm going to be running this with a scope almost entirely for its existence, I don't know if I'm ever going to just drop irons on there. I want extra purchase so I can easily grab onto these and charge the latch from either side. Like usual, we want to lubricate all these parts before they go in. So in this case, I'm going to do a little bit of the Spartan Accuracy grease. It's always up in the air whether you want to use grease or oil on this stuff. If it's a sliding part, for myself, I like to have a grease. It just kind of sticks there, and I think helps to kind of collect any debris that might show up and put it in just the right spot. It kind of collects it and keeps it. It's up to you though. Oil's fine. I've used just the Spartan Accuracy oil, and I really can't tell a difference overall, if I'm using one or the other. This should stick through all kinds of weather. It's not ever going to evaporate off. But then it's kind of the same for the oil as well. It really does not evaporate easily. Because we have some rotating parts, I'll go ahead and put a little bit of the oil in there. Now there are some other options in order to meet the budget a little better. One of the things you'll notice here on the CMMG build side, if you want to go for something a little bit less expensive, is an upper parts kit from Black Rain Ordnance that has the upper parts kit plus one of the regular charging handles. So it should be nice and inexpensive, easy to get into. All right, that feels good. The bolt, like I mentioned before, is also from Odinworks. So this is going to be a perfect match for that barrel. Odinworks parts seem to cost more than normal, but it seems to be commensurate with the sort of results we're going to get out of it. This is very well polished. It just feels very well machined all the way around. Nothing rough about it. Everything just slightly radiused, but everything really well done. No chatter marks. Yeah, this is just a beautiful piece here, and it has a really good finish to it. I'm expecting good things out of it. In this case, with this reciprocating part in the machine, I'm actually going to use the oil instead of the grease. I've found that this works out really well in all kinds of temperatures. because here in Oklahoma we may have really cold weather, we may have really hot. For the summer, yeah, maybe I'll switch over to the grease, but yeah, this does a good job of not evaporating. It just kind of stays where it's supposed to, and yeah, it really just kind of sticks in the metal. Apparently it has a very small size and it goes into the metal pores very easily. And so yeah, this does stick around for a long time. One of the other benefits is that this doesn't really loft back into your face when you shoot suppressed. That was one of the things that I was looking for the most. I got away from oils because as the gun would fire, it would spray the oil, I guess, either out the ejection port here, or it would go back out through the latch and it would get in my eyes. It was quite painful, but yeah, this does not. It just kind of stays put. All right, everything fits together neatly. You can hear some roughness in there, and that will wear in over time. Our upper is completed. Aside from a quick bore scrub before we take this out to the range, this is good to go. If you already have a lower all tricked out the way that you like it, you can skip the rest of this video. But for the rest of you that want to see which parts I picked for this lower, let's go. We're building on that Anderson stripped lower, and I'm using the Rise Armament lower parts kit. Keep in mind that this does not include a trigger guard that needs to go right down here. If you get one of the bigger kits that includes a grip, then a lot of the time it will have this. But for some reason, when you get a lower parts kit, whether it's from CMMG or whoever, it's not going to have it. So make sure you pick one up extra. This is the JE Machine Tech, and I just like the shape of it. It's aluminum, and it has a little bit more room for a gloved hand, so it's not just a straight trigger guard. Also, probably buy this. This is the ATI AR-15 Oops kit, and you're going to find these kind of kits in different, less savory names. This is for the sound that the Amish person will make when that spring goes flying and shoots a detent across the room. Let me remind you that one of the reasons to get the Rise Armament lower parts kit is that it's made right here, and again, that's right here in Broken Arrow, actually. While the parts were made in the US, the packaging was obviously made in hell, but look, I got it open. It looks like I did it with my teeth. But the first thing that we're going to install today is the slide stop and the mag release. And to start out, we're going to need this pin right here. There's only one roll pin in this selection, and that's what we're going to install right there. I'm holding the roll pin punch and the pin itself right up against that hole. Can't see what I'm doing, but I assure you it's great. I'm only installing this pin part way. I don't want it to actually come out here because we need to get the other parts in place first. Find the short fat spring in your kit and this special detent. You can see that it tapers at the end. It has a rounded end here. Both of these are going to need a little bit of lube, and you can see that they sit together just so. These fit into the hole at the bottom. Spring first, detent second. And that's what gives spring pressure to this part. So we'll lube this up a little bit too. As usual, I have the impossible task of trying to push this pin in while holding this in place, so I kind of need 3 hands. I'm going to borrow one with this extra pin punch. I'm going to use this to hold the slide stop in place. Now remember that you can see the length here. This is going to very suddenly get too long and start bonking into the bench. But as long as I use this to just get far enough to catch the slide stop, this should work. That felt good. Yeah, there we go. The pin punch can come out now, and this is being held loosely in place. All we need to do is drive this all the way down. The pin fits nice and flush. Let's make sure it works. Yep, feels good. The mag release comes in these 3 recognizable parts. This is the largest and fattest spring of the bunch, so get the biggest one in there. And make sure that everything is properly lubed. We want these to function properly and to last a long time, so this will help to preserve all the metal. First part to go in is going to be this long threaded piece. So that just slots right in there. Flip over to the other side. Spring goes over the top. And you can see that one side is smooth and one side has the ridges that'll help catch your finger, so those need to go to the outside. So I'm holding the mag catch in place over here, and I can start to screw the button in place. And this will only go so far. That does not look correct. What we need now is to use a pin punch or a pen, and we're going to push this whole assembly through to the other side and continue screwing it in over here. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing on the central pin and pushing this way through to the other side, and you can see the mag catch sticking out. So I'm going to screw this in quite a ways. What I want to do is to get this to the point where the pin is flush with the face of the button. Once I get it there, that should be just plenty. There'll be enough clearance for everything. That's it. You can test this by pressing the button with your finger and watching on the inside to make sure that this clears all the way. Yep, looks great. Your chosen trigger guard may differ from mine, but it's probably going to have this spring-loaded detent. That goes to the front. So it's going to slot in just like this. Rotate your trigger guard up into place, and now we'll install this roll pin. Make sure that you use something to take up the space here. Grab some shim material. If you have a thin piece of wood that you can get under there, just something to keep this from sliding around and having too much room to move. A touch of oil like usual. All right, that feels properly aligned. Rise Armament down the street makes some really good parts, but these are my favorites. The very first Rise part that I ever got to try was an RA535 trigger, and retailing about 240 bucks, it is extremely well worth the price. It is a competition trigger, 3.5 pound pull, very, very crisp, very small over travel. It's also a lightweight unit overall, so it doesn't add much to the rifle's total weight. And I've picked out these two that come down the catalog quite a bit and are much more affordable, but they still have a really good 3.5 pound pull. I've tested both of these so far. This is the RA240 and the RA434. And I actually like the pull on this one better, the RA240, so I'm going to drop this in. I'll put links again to both of these triggers in that document, so if you want to be able to grab one of these, help yourself. The 434 feels quite good, but this one just plain feels crisper. It's also cheaper, so win all the way around. You can see that this is a kind of a fully encapsulated unit. This is a single drop-in trigger, but it is going to require a little bit more installation. This doesn't use the normal pins to hold the trigger in place. You have to use these special anti-walk pins that go all the way through. Like usual, I'm going to lubricate all the steel parts, except for those screws. I'm going to use some Loctite on those. But these pins really do need it. They're really an integral part of how the trigger sits in here, so the smoother I can make the connection, the better. Just like it says on the box, this is a drop-in trigger. There we go. I'm going to use a pin punch to hold this in place, make sure that it's aligned, and get the first pin installed. There we go. And this will stick out just a little bit on each side. It's not going to be completely flush. It's going to be really, really close, but not quite flush. Now here's something interesting. The trigger came with this Allen key, and this doesn't fit the screws that hold the pins in place. This is actually one that fits the set screw that's under the hammer, and this is going to change your pull weight. So you can actually use this to, I think you actually press down to increase your pull weight, and you can make this a heavier pull if you want to get up beyond the 3.5 pounds. However, when I met with Rise, they Loctite those in place with red Loctite, so you have to use heat in order to break those free. So I think it's kind of interesting that they included this. I don't recommend, and I think Rise doesn't recommend, that you actually adjust the trigger, but well, they threw this in, so at least know what it's for. A drop of blue Loctite on each of these screws, and these are going to work counter to each other, and that's why they've included two small Allen keys for installing these screws. You're going to have to work against each side. The guys at Rise told me that this takes very low torque, So I would just keep this on the short end and twist them until they don't want to move anymore, and that should do it. It should be, if you actually have a bit that's small enough to fit this, this is supposed to be 8 inch-pounds or pound-inches. I think it was really cool of Rise to start including these anti-walk pins. It used to be they didn't do that. You just have to go out and get your own, and I didn't realize that when I got my first trigger, so I had to go out and try to find one. But yeah, it's nice that they have these. Now these will float just a little bit as you push them. From either side, you're going to feel that they float around, they move back and forth just a little bit, and that is perfect. That's the way that it's supposed to go. Now let's make sure that the trigger functions properly. I did have an issue with the RA140 SST, which is a wonderful trigger and I recommend it, but it isn't completely compatible with everybody's lowers. Sometimes these pins can have a little bit of a weird spacing. And so it wouldn't reliably reset every time. So what I'm going to do is give this a pull. Oh man, that feels good. That is so smooth. All right, so that felt good. So what I need to do is make sure that it resets every time. Okay. All right, so I'm keeping the trigger pulled. It goes back down. Oh yeah. Yep. Feels good. The safety lever and grip have to go together. They're installed at the same time. This actually holds a detent in place to make sure that this actually snaps into place correctly. This is the ATI X1 AR-15 grip, and this is going to look pretty familiar. This looks a lot like the Fab Defense grip. It has good finger grooves, which I'm a fan of. I do like finger grooves. And it has a kind of a rubber recoil sort of pad here on the back that slots in. However, I did just find an error with this. It doesn't include the screw that goes up through the back. It's supposed to install straight down through that hole and up into here. And none of the other parts kits that I have include that. So I'm gonna have to go buy one, or I'm gonna have to scavenge one off another grip that I have. I managed to scavenge one off my 5.7x28 Banshee. So just keep that in mind. If you're gonna purchase this grip, you're gonna have to get the screw separately, strangely enough. Some of the things that I like about this grip include how much it fills the hand. It's not like I have huge hands or anything, but they are just a little bit on the open side. I don't have a whole lot of meat on them. So a larger, thicker grip feels really good to me. I also like how vertical the presentation is. The ones that lay back a whole bunch really start to get uncomfortable when you get into the prone position or other oddball positions, and so this is gonna feel really comfy. To start, make sure that your hammer is in the upper position, and we're going to lubricate the safety a little bit. But yeah, if the hammer isn't in the upper position, you probably won't be able to get this in place. And I'm going to leave that in the fire position. Flipping it upside down and spinning it around. You see this hole? We're going to drop in the larger brass detent from the kit. Pointed end goes in first, and we have a selection of springs. We're not looking at the really long, thin ones. We're looking at this one that's just a little bit thicker. This has a flattened section, and that's what's going to push against the detent. Now this gets dropped into the grip first, so it's going to sit like that, and then this will push on that detent. Drop in the grip screw. Before I assemble the rest of the grip, let's make sure that this works. There we go. Like usual, it's a little stiff at first. The detent has a point to it, and little by little that'll start to wear. It shouldn't push out. Nope, feels good. Now I can finish installing the rest of the grip. Depending on which one you get, you might not have all these parts. A lot of them, it might just be open on the bottom. Like the good old A2 grip, you just push the screw through and then you're done. This one though, push the grip all the way down, and then 2 screws to attach it. You can think of the rubber here not so much for absorbing recoil, but more for enhancing grip. I should think it will grip onto gloves especially well. Oh, man, that trigger's good. I've gotten out the lower vise block because I want both hands free for these next operations. This is the buffer tube assembly, and this ATI model has everything in it. It has the spring, the buffer, the castle nut, everything except the actual stock. Make sure you get the right size. There's the commercial size and the military size, and it depends on what lower you got. We're starting to get into dangerous territory, so far we haven't had to use this. Hopefully we won't for the rest of the build. As usual, make sure you lube your springs and detents. This is the last large spring in the kit. That's going to drop down right in there. This is the detent that will sit on top of it, and we'll just kind of let it hang out here a little bit. We're not going to push it down yet. Next is the rear takedown pin. It has a slot cut into it. This is going to feed in from the right side, but that slot needs to point directly toward the back. Find one of the tiny detents in your kit. It depends on what kit you bought. Here with the Rise, we have one side that's a little bit sharper. It's kind of a sharper point, and then it's a little bit rounder on the other. And I can choose which one of these goes in first. If I do the sharper, it's going to lock up that takedown pin a little bit harder. It's going to be more stable in the field, I guess. It's not going to accidentally pop out. Or you can make it smoother and quicker to retract by using this smoother end. I'm going to go ahead and use the sharper end for stability. I believe this is brass, and so this will wear a little bit over time, but that just goes right into this hole. I'm going to tamp this down to make sure that it's making contact, and my takedown pin shouldn't spin. There we go, that's it. That's locked neatly in place, and I'm not going to put the spring in just yet. Time for the buffer tube. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on the threads. Castle nut. These nocks need to go toward the back. Locking ring. This kind of punched out area needs to go toward the front, and it's going to slide right onto that rib. And now we can start threading this on. As we turn closer, you can see that the threads are getting closer and closer to this detent. Oh, and there it is. It just made contact. So now it's time to back it off just a tiny little bit, and I'm going to push this down into place. 1/4 turn, and it just starts to bite. Go 1 full turn more. And this is held neatly in place. This is where it's going to end up, but let's turn this just a little bit too far. It's going to protest just a little bit, but I need to make room to put a spring into that hole where the detent is here. So I'm going to take one of these small, long springs, jam it in. You can use a knife blade, a shim piece of wood, whatever, but you need to push this in and then turn this back. And this is where you can start to get into that oops kit. This spring wants to fly across the room. I'm trying really hard. There we go. So it's being captured now by the lock ring. I'm going to take the castle nut. And just get that hand tight. On my DPMS wrench, this is the castle nut spanner. I have an alternate wrench here. This has the same kind of spanner across this side, and then it also has this castle nut attachment tool. The castle nut doesn't require a whole gob of torque. This is not like a barrel attachment or anything. Just make sure that it's snug. Before we leave this area, let's make sure that the takedown pin works. Oh, that's firm. Okay. Yeah, it must be brass. It's wearing in just a little bit. Okay. Should be nice and tight. A well-oiled spring. Buffer. Now for the most evil part of this whole build and the reason why ATI makes that OOPS kit. Place the spring into this hole, and then this detent, again I'm going to put kind of the sharper end forward. That's going to sit right in that hole as well, and this is going to want to throw itself across the room. Thankfully, if you bought the kit that I showed here, the Armorer's Punch Kit, it comes with this. This is a plastic, sort of a dowel that is just the right depth. So this is going to hold that detent in place while we put the pin in. So what I'm going to do is start to put this detent in place. Push it in with one pin punch. Hold it in place with the other. Okay, there we go. So that's being held in place very neatly. And you can do this with a dowel. I've done this before. If you have anything that's almost exactly the same size as the hole, then you can hold this in place, as long as it's long enough to go all the way through. If you don't have a dowel or a pin punch like this one, you can put a towel over the whole contraption as you're doing it, and then hopefully the towel will capture the pin as it goes flying off when you try to do this part. So I'm just going to take this pin, put it right up against the pin punch, and it doesn't matter this time which way the slot goes. I'm going to have to rotate it into place anyway. But I will just put, oh, it wants to go flying. Okay, I caught it. All right, so that's now far enough, and if I spin this, click. Yeah, that's very firm. This will take a little bit to wear in. Oh, that's already getting better. You can fudge a bunch of the tools that you've seen on my bench here today. You can see how it makes installation a whole lot easier. It's nice to have the proper roll pin punches so they don't accidentally collapse one of the roll pins. You can fake that by actually inserting a piece of wire inside a roll pin if you need to. And if you have spanners that are roughly the same size as the castle nut, you could probably use that instead of an exact armorer's wrench. If you have one of the old school AR-15s that has the delta ring though, you will need a special tool like this one. Some of the other tools that you really can't fudge are going to be the vice block at the top. Make sure that you absolutely pick one of these things up. They're much cheaper than they used to be and much more accessible, and this makes the work not just easier, but it actually makes it possible. If you don't have at least this upper vice block, you're going to be in trouble. The Magpul PRS Lite stock is one of the highlight pieces of this whole build. I am really jazzed about this. It features adjustable parts, so you have an adjustable cheek piece, you have an adjustable butt, so you can make this the exact length of pull that you need, and this butt can actually travel up and down, so if you want to spend more time in the prone especially, you want to be able to crank this up to get it a bit more behind your shoulder instead of sitting kind of down on your chest. You can also cant this, and this is going to be very, very comfortable out in the field once I get it adjusted. Also, this is going to add a little bit of weight to the back. One of the ways that we can fix the balance of an AR-15 rifle, especially one with kind of a heavier barrel like I've chosen, is to add a little bit of weight to the back. If you can put some, especially right back here, it's going to make this much more comfortable to hold for longer periods of time. The PRS Lite stock is brand new for this year, and it supposedly comes in black, green, and tan, and I ordered the tan, but all they did was release the black one at first, and I really wanted to get this build done, so okay, it's gonna look a little funky. All the parts on this rifle are gonna be black except for the grip, but that's okay, I plan to paint this anyway. To take this down, we're gonna need some Allen keys. This is 1/8 inch. There we go. And you might recognize that this looks like one of those QD sockets for a sling, and that's exactly what it is. This can actually be swapped left to right. So if you know where your sling is going to end up, you can swap this side. If you want to put it over on the right, you can remove this, pop this out, and put it in place. So that's actually your sling socket right there. But with this loose, I'm going to remove all this. And then this just slides neatly onto the buffer tube. So this does not really adjust its depth like this. Instead, this has its own moving parts, which I'll demonstrate here in a second. Pop in the QD socket. This is actually the lock that keeps the whole thing from moving. I'll produce a full video on the Magpul PRS Lite, but there are a couple things I want to point out before you go out and buy one. Just know what you're getting into beforehand. This is not quite like the PRS Gen 2 or Gen 3. First off, it is a whole lot lighter. It's mostly plastic and it is skeletonized, so this weighs a whole ton less than that. But it also misses some of the features, so if you're expecting to be able to very quickly change your configuration out in the field, forget about it. You're going to need some wrenches available to be able to do that. So to adjust the comb, for example, I have this long 1/8 inch Allen key, and there's a screw that you have to loosen back here, and then you can start to track this up and down, and then it locks back into place. So this is kind of a size it before you go out in the field sort of thing. You get this set up just the way you want. Never mind, this is a 5/32 wrench, and it goes in at a funky angle. So yeah, this is not going to be the easiest to deal with out in the field. Yeah, I can't even really get in there with the short end. The same thing applies to the length of pull. You have to loosen a screw on this side in order to shift it. And then to change the height or the cant of the butt pad back here, you have 2 screws at the back. I've heard some folks complaining about how the cheek piece is a little bit wobbly. It doesn't exactly lock perfectly into place, and I can back that up. You can see that it has just a little bit of flex. I don't think that's a big deal at all. It does move a little bit at the front, but I don't think that's going to be a showstopper for me. All right, this is what we've been waiting for. Let's give it a feel. See if our hard work has paid off. Okay, that snapped together really neatly, and it feels like there's a good bit of tightness to it. Yeah, there's very, very little wobble between the upper and lower, so this should be nice and precise even in the prone. This is heavier than the average carbine that I've built or bought. This does have some heft to it. It's that barrel, but the most important thing for me is going to be the balance. So let's see how it does. Got my hand right in front of the magwell. Okay, yeah, it wants to fall backward. So that is exactly right. I wanted to be able to pitch it further toward the magazine, and this has accomplished that. This will be a little bit more effort to kind of hump out in the field. It's going to be a little bit heavier. It'll wear me out a little bit quicker, but that's fine. I can take it. And yeah, as long as the balance is good when it goes to take that shot, then yeah, I don't care. So let's see. That feels nice and smooth when pulling from just one side. Yeah, latch works great. The whole action feels good. And let's try the trigger. Well, let's see how it points too. Oh yeah, I'm really gonna like this cheek piece. It's nice and rounded. These Rise triggers are amazing. I can feel no creep. It just snaps. Light pull, snap, tiny bit of over travel. That's the RA240. And I really, so far, you know, having not actually tested it in the field, I can already just recommend this. This thing is amazing. Thanks a lot for watching, you guys. In the next video, we'll put the optic on, we'll level it, and kind of get the right, well, I've already set the length of pull in the background, so I've got my 14.5 inch length of pull going here. And by the way, this will extend to nearly 15.5 inches length of pull. So if you're a big guy and you want to be able to have a stock that actually fits you, take a look at the Magpul PRS Lite, because this does get a lot more extension than you're used to. But yeah, in the next video, we'll put the optic on, make sure that we get the correct eye relief once the length of pull is set. And yeah, we're gonna see how that feels too. We'll see how the balance works once we get the scope in place. So hit that notification bell down below. That's the most important thing. Please subscribe if you want to be able to see more of these videos and some of the other things we come up with in the future. But yeah, the biggest one is gonna be the notification bell. That'll let you know when the new video has come out, because I'm gonna try to release these once a week, maybe a little quicker as we get into some of the hand loading ones, and we'll see how it goes. Thanks a lot, you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.
Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. Even if you didn't like this particular content, go ahead and subscribe. There's probably something coming that's more up your alley. Check out this playlist right here. This is going to have videos in a similar vein to what you just watched. These 2 videos we cherry-picked for you. And finally, The Social Regressive is on Patreon. So you can become a patron of the Destructive Arts and earn some goodies while helping us to provide high-quality videos just by kicking us a few bucks a month. Thanks a bunch for your patronage.